Hello friends, this video on Heredity and Evolution Part 7 is brought to you by examfear.com. No more fear from exam. Let us now see what are homologous and heterologous chromosomes. So this is again something new. When we are talking about chromosomes, it is important to know about homologous and heterologous chromosomes. Now, homologous chromosomes, let us discuss first. A set of one maternal chromosome and one paternal chromosome that pair up with each other inside a cell. So what are these homologous chromosomes? Now, the word homo itself means something which is similar. So a set of one maternal chromosome, that means the chromosome from mother, and one paternal chromosome, that is the chromosome from father, that pair up each other inside a cell. So as I said, inside a cell, the chromosomes, right now I'm talking of diploid cells, because only the diploid cells will have two sets of chromosomes, right? So inside the diploid cell, chromosomes will always exist in pairs. So the pair of chromosomes where one set is from the father, the other set is from the mother, and they are similar to each other. They are known as homologous chromosomes. So they are of same size and shape. Their form will remain the same. So such chromosomes are called homologous chromosomes. They bear corresponding genes governing the same traits. Now we know that when you look at the structure of a chromosome, so on the chromosomes you have genes, right? And these genes actually control the different characters in our body. So when I talk about homologous chromosomes, they are somewhat like this. Let us suppose this is one chromosome, this is another chromosome, right? And here you have the genes located. So such regions, so these region of the two chromosomes are known as homologous regions, which code for the same gene. That means they both code for the same gene. Now you might ask that the same gene is present here also, but what are these two? These are the sister chromatids. I have already explained you, right? These are known as chromatids. This center part which joins the two chromatids is known as centromere. So the homologous chromosomes are two different chromosomes where same genes are present in the homologous region, right? So they have these homologous region basically consist of different version of the same gene, right? So let me take an example. Let us suppose if I talk about the eye color, right? So this is the paternal chromosome. Let us suppose this is the paternal chromosome and this is the maternal chromosome. So if I am talking about eye color, let us suppose that the father's eye color is blue and the mother's eye color is black. So in this case, if this gene corresponds to the trait of eye color, right? So for eye color, both of them will represent brown, both of these. So that means the sister chromatids are exact replica of each other. But these maternal chromosomes, they will represent blue. So these two will again be representing blue. But if you compare this and this is also representing eye color. This is also representing eye color. That means both are representing same gene but different versions. This is representing black color, this is representing blue color. So they are representing different versions of the same gene. So now you understand what are homologous chromosomes. They are two sets of chromosomes which exist in pair, one contributed by father, one contributed by mother, and they both are of same shape and size, and they bear genes governing the same traits in the corresponding region. That means the gene governing eye color are present in the same region. Similarly, let us suppose the gene governing the skin color is present in the same region. Similarly, the gene governing the ear lobe shape, that is also present along the same region. So these are known as homologous chromosomes. So now here in this picture also you can see the homologous chromosomes. So here these blue color, here you can see This represents the eye color, this blue color represents the father's eye color, this black color represents the mother eye color. So they are known as homologous chromosomes. Similarly, if I talk about heterologous chromosomes, that means different. So they differ in shape, size and function. Like in case of homologous chromosome, they were of same shape and size. But here they have different shapes, different sizes and different functions as well. Because here the function was also similar. Everything was corresponding to eye color. But here that is not the case. So they do not belong to the same pair. So that means if we take one pair of this chromosome and another pair of some other chromosome, maybe one part is corresponding to eye color and the other part is corresponding to skin color. So those kind of chromosomes are known as heterologous chromosomes. Right? So why I am explaining this is because these terms homologous and heterologous will come as we go ahead and discuss about Mendel's experiments. So now we will know about a new concept called allele. So what are allele? So now I already told you the experiment which Mendel had performed. Now how do we denote the traits of different organisms? Like as I said, there is one tall plant, there is one short plant. So how do we denote the characteristics? Now the traits are basically denoted with the help of letters. For example, in order to describe a tall plant, maybe I can denote it by a capital T. In order to denote a trait, that is a dwarf plant, so maybe I can denote it by a small t. So that is how we denote things, right? So now, allele is one member of a pair of genes that occupy a given position on a homologous chromosome, because we saw that when you take the example of the homologous chromosome, so what do we see here? So in this homologous chromosome, this blue color and this dark blue color, they all represent the same gene, right? So but they are present in pairs. This is one pair, this is one member of the pair, this is another member of the pair. So allele is one member of a pair of genes that occupy a given position on a homologous chromosome. So let us suppose if I denote, let me take an example this way. Let us suppose if this denotes the blue eye color, which is denoted by a small b. Let us suppose if this denotes the black eye color, which is denoted by a capital B. So when you combine together these two chromosomes, because they are existing in pairs, so what do you get? Small b, capital B. So what would be the eye color when taken together? It will be black, because black is the dominant trait, right? Now each of these pair, that means this small b and this capital B, they are separately known as an allele. So allele is one member of a pair of genes that occupy a given position on a homologous chromosome. Why they occupy a given position? Because they are going to correspond to the same trait. Right? Because in homologous chromosome, if they occupy the corresponding positions, that itself means that they are going to correspond to the same trait. Now let us look at some examples. Let us suppose if we take this example of the dwarf plant. So how do we denote its allele? Now this dwarf plant, the plant is in Mendel's experiment, we saw that dwarf was the recessive trait. Right? It was not expressed in F1 generation. Now we have also studied that when a recessive trait gets expressed, when it inherits the trait from both of its parents. So that means this plant is dwarf because it has got a dwarf trait from its both the parents. Right? So how do we denote this? We denote it as small t, small t. That means we are talking about a perfectly dwarf plant. It has received a small t from one parent and a small t from the other parent as well. So each t is known as an allele. Similarly, if we are talking about a tall plant. So this tall plant, for a plant to be tall, there are many possibilities. Maybe it has got the tall trait from both the parents, maybe it has got tall trait from one of the parents. So we can represent it as capital T, which shows that it has received a tall trait from the father as well as a tall trait from the mother. Similarly, we can also represent it as capital T, small t. That means it has received a tall trait from one parent, whereas a dwarf trait from another parent. But since tall trait was dominant, so the plant is tall. Similarly, we can also represent it as small t, capital T. That is, it has received a dwarf trait from the first parent and a tall trait from the second parent. Right? And each of these members, so we express the characteristic of any organism in terms of, with the help of letters. Right? Now, each member of this pair is known as an allele. Right? So allele is a term which is new to you, and this is the significance of allele. So let us look at these examples. So these are the examples of alleles. Let us now talk about homozygous and heterozygous organisms. Now that we have spoken about alleles, we also saw that there are many ways by which we can express the alleles or the traits of organisms. So based on what type of alleles are present in an organism, they can be classified into two types, homozygous and heterozygous. Homozygous organisms, the word homo always means something related to similar. So these organisms will have identical alleles, that is similar alleles on homologous chromosomes. For example, capital T, small t, small t. So that means if we talk about a dwarf plant, as I mentioned in the previous slide also, we write it as TT. Since it has received the same traits from both the parents, that is why it is known as a homozygous dwarf plant. Similarly, if we talk about a tall plant which has received tall trait from both the parents, we write it as capital T. So both the alleles are identical. So it is known as a homozygous tall plant. Now, if self-bred gives rise to offsprings with same traits, that means we all know what is self-breeding. Self-breeding is nothing but self-pollination. So, self-pollination means if the pollination happens in the flower of the same plant. So, let us see exactly what happens on self-breeding. Now, let us suppose that if we self-pollinate the homozygous tall plant, that means tall plant with another tall plant. So now this tall plant has two alleles, T and T. Similarly, this tall plant also has two alleles. Now what are the possibilities which are possible? This T can combine with this can also combine with this can combine with this, or this can combine with this. So what do we see? In all the cases, we get homozygous tall plants, right? So all tall homozygous. So if it is self-bred, it gives rise to offsprings with the same traits. That means this is also homozygous tall, so they are also homozygous tall. Similarly, if we self-bred the dwarf plants, in that case also what are the possibilities? This will give out its alleles, and these alleles can combine with in any of these fashion. So in all the cases we get homozygous dwarf plants, right? So this is all about an homozygous organism. Let us now look at heterozygous organism. Now I am sure you know by now what is heterozygous. It is organism with different alleles for a character on homologous chromosomes, because both are true for homologous chromosomes, because only for homologous chromosomes both the chromosomes will correspond to the same character, right? So here what is that character which we are talking about? In case of these plants, we are talking about the height. So whether it is tall or dwarf, it is talking about the height of the plant. So examples of heterozygous organisms would be small t capital T or capital T small t. So here we have two different alleles, but since the tall is a dominant trait, so the plant is tall. So if one allele is dominant, the trait will also be dominant. So in this case, we can say that these are also known as hybrid. Heterozygous is also called hybrid. So we can call these as hybrid tall plants or heterozygous tall plants. Right now, aren't you curious to know that what would happen if we self-bred these heterozygous tall plants? So let us try to see what will happen if we try to self-bred them. Let us suppose if capital T small t is self-pollinated with capital T small t, what will happen? It has these two alleles, this has these two alleles. So these are the possibilities that can occur, right? So what do we get? In the first option, we'll get capital T, then we'll get capital T, small t, then we'll get small t, capital T, then we'll get small t, small t. So in this case, if you see, the products are not all identical to the parent organism, right? You see that only 2 of them are heterozygous. So 50% are heterozygous. The remaining 2 are homozygous. So we can say that if we self-bred heterozygous organisms, only 50% of them are heterozygous, right? Also, we see that how many of them are tall and how many of them are short. We can say that this is tall, this is also tall. So this is tall homozygous, this is tall hybrid, this is also tall hybrid, and this one is dwarf. So what do we see? The result is that 3 out of 4 are tall. That means 75% of them are tall. 1 out of 4 is dwarf. That is 25% of the results are dwarf, right? Okay, so this was all about homozygous and heterozygous organisms. So with this, I think I have covered all the important basics which was needed to understand the Mendel's experiments in detail. So let us have a quick review. What are the things that we studied? We talked about what happens during sexual reproduction. How does the chromosome numbers change? We talked about the diploid and haploid cells. We also talked about homologous, heterologous chromosomes, homozygous and heterozygous organisms, and alleles, right? So with this basic knowledge, I think we are good to go. Thank you. Please visit www.examfear.com to watch more videos, attempt free online test, get free study material, find tutors and mentors. Thank you once again.